Okay, listen up, you savages. It's Muchacho back live and in your face and on the Audiotent YouTube channel to provide another dose of knowledge and raw emotion for you. And it's emotion that we're going to go for today. So the title of this video is How to Make Beautiful Melodies. But what I really mean is sad, tear-jerking melodies that make you cry a little on the inside. The reason for this video is frankly because these are the type of melodies that I enjoy writing and they're the type of sounds that I enjoy hearing in songs. In addition, a few people have said to me over the years that I'm pretty good at coming up with complex sounding emotional melodies, so let's hope that's true. So I think the key to this is to like what you're doing. I'm no good at writing tech house, for example, because I don't really love that style and I won't spend the time and brain power to master it. When it comes to these sorts of melodies, I've always gravitated towards them, so they kind of come second nature. My journey into this kind of music was a familiar one. I started off listening to trance back in the 90s. Then I got into a much more progressive sound, but it was still very melodic. I also spent a lot of time listening to film scores, which invariably tend to be very good at pulling on your emotions. All of this adds up to some pretty emotive music. So a minute bit of theory first, and it might be obvious to most, but for sad melodies, you need to be using sad keys, and they're the minor keys. Major keys tend to sound happy and upbeat, whereas minor keys are much more melancholic. Or melancholy? Much more melancholy. Melancholy. A rudimentary understanding of chord progressions might help as well, but in essence you can break it down to this. Going upwards on your keyboard sounds triumphant, having notes descend sounds much more reflective. This tends to work for both individual notes and chords. Let's not worry too much about this though, so let's have a quick listen to the demo track that I've made for this tutorial. So as you can see, I haven't included any melodies, obviously because I'm going to make them in this video dummy, but all the percussion is made up of loops from the gradient sample pack from Audiotent. I slowed everything all the way down to 100 BPM to give a kind of slow rolling feeling. Slower tempos also give you a bit more space to create complex melodies. So, shockingly, I don't have a plan for what's next, but I have loaded up a basic piano sound, as it's always easy to come up with a decent chord progression using a piano. Indeed, if you're stuck trying to make a melody, sometimes it can be beneficial to use something basic like a piano to sketch out a melody before swapping it out for something a bit more complex, like an evolving synth sound. Anyway, I digress. Let's just have a play around and play in some very basic chords. Okay, that sounds pretty good. I was just hitting combinations there and trying to keep it simple. If you choose a hugely complex chord progression here, it won't leave you any room to embellish with other sounds and melodies, like strings for example. I always like to keep the underlying melody simple and then build others on top. So here I'm going to play in a sequence of A minor, G, F, and finishing on D minor, the saddest of all keys. Okay, you'll notice I added in a note an octave below, mirroring the lowest note in each chord. This just serves to beef up the sound. Think of it along the same lines as tuning an oscillator an octave lower and then blending it in with your sound. You can create a very interesting chord progression by doing clever things with these notes, such as going in the opposite direction to the note above, but for now we'll leave them as they are. So immediately in my big brain, I'm thinking of what kind of bass line that would suit this melody. As we're going for pure emotion, something funky wouldn't fit. I like the idea of a rhythmic bass line, perhaps one that follows the lowest notes from our chords. I'm going to use Diva and the Evolution bass preset from the Scope pack. Let's see what it sounds like. Okay, I like that. Let's tidy it up. My thought process here is to keep the bass line as unobtrusive as possible, while still complementing the melody. We don't want it to clash or complicate things, as we're probably going to use some pads or strings, and too many different melodies can make a track sound incohesive. The bass line is melodic, but because it's following the same melody as the piano chords, it's not complicating the melody, it's complementing it. There's a big difference there. So thinking about the melody that we have, it's chords. What we can't do now is add more chords, but what would work? I think of two things immediately: short, arpeggiated melodies, and then strings or pads. Let's start with some pads. Now, if you want epic, strings or pads are your thing, but they take up a lot of space, so you have to be careful not to dominate your entire mix with these huge, deep sounds. I like to go for something that sits a little higher up, and I usually EQ out a lot of the low end to avoid muddying the mix. So I've gone for one of the presets from the Scope preset pack. This one is called Heaven. Why not? Heaven indeed. My goal here is to press a few notes whilst the track is playing, get a feel for it. I'm aiming to go the opposite way this time, so starting at A and going upwards instead of descending like the chords and bass line. This should, in theory, create an even more emotive sound. Okay, I think I know what I want. Let's record it. The little pitch bend down at the end there really adds to the overall sadness, I feel. So you can see there I've started off at A, the same as with the piano chords, but I've gone upwards until I feel I've reached a logical peak before descending once back down again towards A. This gives the melody a feeling of being resolved, as if it's asking a question, but then getting an answer that doesn't really make it happy. The only way I can describe it is, when you hit the last note, it feels like a note of resignation, like you've tried and failed, and now it's time to give up. But let's not give up, suckers. I'm just going to EQ off the low end and tidy it all up a bit. Okay, let's keep going. We can add more melodies, But we've got to be realistic here. You could easily stop and just layer in a subtle pad, but for the purpose of this video, I'll add in something else first. As you can hear, there's not a lot of space left in the track, so we need something short and plucky. So I've gone for a very simple ARP sound. As you can see from the patch I've made it's just a very simple and short pluck. Let's improvise a bit. So you could come up with a new melody, but it could very well prove to be too much for the track and clash with everything else. Let's just copy the pattern from the lead sound. Bear with me while I sort the pitch out. It's going to sound very weird at the start. So you will have noticed I added a delay to the bass line as it felt a little bit too ploddy. Adding that simple delay makes it flow a little bit better. I could have done this by just adding in more notes, but the delay gives you instant control over the volume of the repeated notes, much in the same way that you would have by automating the velocity. Okay, now I think we would be taking it too far by adding something else, so let's add something else. The lead is really just a pad, so I'll add in a shorter lead sound over the top, because I play by nobody else's rules, not even my own. I think you get the point. My philosophy when writing a very melodic track is to keep the fundamentals simple, like the bass line. The percussion as well. You want to leave space for all the beeps and boops. If you play everything in by hand, you can't come up with the same happy accidents by drawing notes in the piano roll. Just let your track play and hit some keys. Stick to minor keys. melodies that descend sound sadder than ones that climb. And if you're adding in strings, get them to do the opposite of your melody. Have them climb but never quite reach their peak, and have them return to where they began. Use the pitch bend for a whining sound, like a really sad doggy. So I hope you found that useful. Hit me up down in the comments with any tracks that you find really sad and make you cry a little on the inside. Not on the outside, because we don't cry on the outside because we're too macho for that. Just a little sad on the inside. And I'll see you next time.